Hi there, welcome back to the channel. Today you're in for another real treat, especially those of you that are fans of Wingnut wings. Sadly now long departed manufacturer of very fine scale model kits. Those of you that don't know, Wingnut wings basically specialised really just in World War One aircraft, and was part owned by the film director Sir Peter Jackson of Lord of the Rings fame. And it's a passion of his. He owns many vintage aircraft, and also funded, sponsored and financed lots of others, especially in New Zealand and Australia. Anyway, we don't know the details of why they are no more, so I won't dwell on that, but let's have a look at another one of their fantastic, best of the best quality, let's be honest. So we know, I think if I end up criticising this kit, very unlikely, we know what we're going to get here. It's not going to be like the main recent release of the Fokker triplane with bendy, warped sprues and parts all broken. Sorry about that, but that's true. We know what we're going to get, but this kit was actually one of my Christmas gifts, so it's quite precious to me, precious. And I didn't really get a proper chance to look at it on Christmas Day, if I'm honest, with all the excitement, all the present opening and having a visitor, etc. A visitor, because it's the rules that we had this year. Anyway, let's have a look at what we got. Now, William Barker is an interesting character. I'll be honest with you, I didn't know much about him, if anything, actually. I've heard his name, but I've never actually known of him. He was a Canadian, and he became one of the great aces. I think he was the second most successful ace of World War II, certainly of the Canadians anyway, second most successful Canadian. But he never quite got his number of sort of kills, if you like, or ace numbers of shot down aircraft, because he was constantly transferred back and forth, and he was considered so good they wanted him to be a training instructor. He wanted to sort of pass on how good he was and his skills to other pilots, and long story short, he kept getting transferred from the front line. He started in the trenches as a soldier and then got transferred in 1915 to join the Royal Flying Corps, Royal Canadian Flying Corps, and he operated at places like Vimy Ridge and places like that. But he had a natural gift, along with Billy Bishop, the other famous Canadian ace, who he became great friends with after the war, by the way. Anyway, he, as I never quite attained the sort of level of fame, because he never quite got the opportunities to be in the front line that often. But when he did, he really made up for it. And in his last engagement, which was supposed to be a reconnaissance mission, he'd been transferred for a week, 10 days I think it was, from England to France, when he was in an operational training unit that he was leading. And he said, I need to, this aircraft, the Sopwith Snipe, was one of the ones he flew. And he insisted on going back to France because he needed to familiarise himself with the current warfare tactics and the aircraft, and he was allowed to. Crazy, really. They allowed him to go back over there, and he couldn't get airborne because the weather was terrible for about 7 or 8 days. On the very last day, it was good enough to fly, and he was supposed to do like an observation mission, reconnaissance mission, and he, instead of turning back to England after about half an hour, he actually went straight back to the front line and found himself embroiled in a confrontation with what they claim is 60 German aircraft. Now, there was 1 or 2 other British planes in there, but literally it was less than a handful, and he ended up shooting up something like 4 or 5 of these, and he got shot up himself, and he got badly wounded. He crashed really, in a field, and he had wounds to his shoulder, I think, his leg, his hand. He had a lot of wounds, and it was his last. He knew it was his last chance to have a go at the enemy, and he actually won the Victoria Cross for his. Sorry, I was going to say the Medal of Honour. There was an award that was given. It wasn't the Victoria Cross. It was the second best thing to the Medal of Honour, which is like American or Canadian Victoria Cross. And he got this award because he was witness. They reckon that no time was such an act of extreme heroism, almost madness, witnessed by so many people, because it was all over near Vimy Ridge, and the Canadians, his own countrymen, were down below in the trenches, and hundreds of them watched him in this incredible battle where he fell through layer after layer of German aircraft, shooting them up and getting hit himself, and eventually crashing to the ground in a light sort of crash landing that he survived. with many injuries. And then the war, very shortly after that, the war was over anyway, within 12 months. So, a remarkable character. So, without further ado, that's enough of the history, we'll get into this. It says here, the usual Wingnut Wings, beautiful, sort of almost photographic style artwork on the side. So you're not left in any doubt what it should look like. And you can see the Snipe here, which is one of the later developments. You could say it was an evolution of the camel. Shorter, stubbier, less drag, very manoeuvrable little plane, plenty of power. And it says here, it'll probably tell us the power actually if I read this. Yeah. Okay, so some of what I've told you was a little bit errored there. It was in fact the Victoria Cross. I was right the first time. I was perhaps mixing them up with another story I'd heard. So he was in fact awarded the Victoria Cross, even though he lived, which is quite rare. And he had this incredible final 4 victories on the 27th of October 1918. So this is just a fortnight before the end of the war. So, you know, he was really up for it, wasn't he? And it says the Snipe was powered by a rotary engine. It was the last rotary engine powered fighter to serve in the Royal Air Force and was still going in 1927 when it was then replaced by the radial engine Gloucester Grebe and Hawker Woodcock. So that's interesting. So it's really the last of the line. So an evolution, a highly developed version of a rotary engined aircraft. Blooming great prop. So anyway, we won't dwell on this. Let's get into the kit and see what we got. Those of you who love Wingnut Wings kits, I know one gentleman wrote to me and said, please stop doing these videos. He said, please stop doing these videos. Wingnut Wings, he meant. He said, because it's like torture. I can't get them without paying ridiculous amounts of money for them on eBay, you know. So I feel a bit smug really, because this was a gift, so I've acquired this. It didn't cost me anything. So I'm a very lucky boy indeed. Let's have a look inside. Wow, now then. As I say, I don't think we're expecting any bent warp screws or any of that silliness. I'm afraid I'm not going to open the bags for you. I'm afraid you'll have to bear with me on that, because at this moment in time, a bit reluctant. So, we've got a lovely, wonderful Wingnut Wings instruction book. A beautiful character. That is something that when I was looking at it on Christmas Day, I missed the character, the figure, and it's exceptional. So we'll talk about that in a minute. And then we've got some nice decals. So let's move all these gubbins out of the way and we'll just get into the kit. Pop that over there, pop that over there. Right, here we go. I think we start where we always start, which is with the decals and instructions. And I'll try not to dwell too much on this because it can get a bit long-winded, I know. But what you notice with Wingnut Wings, and what is sadly so lacking now with other manufacturers, especially when Meng have taken on the triplane, you know, it's like night and day. You know, Wingnut give you the full history. Everything that they could research is in a truncated form is here. They have beautiful colour, basically a photograph here of the decals. Shows all the parts on the sprue trees. And then we get straight into the build. And here we have it. Let me just try and get enough room here. Bring you in a bit closer for this. So you start by building up your cockpit, petrol tank and floorboards. Never fails to amaze me the petrol tank situation and the seat situation in these World War I planes is so crude and dangerous looking, isn't it? So, and then, you know, again, you've got this all in colour, you've got photographs in black and white of the actual relevant parts, which leaves you in no doubt what it should look like. Nobody else does this. And I say to the manufacturers that Wingnut Wings were not cheap kits, but they sold like hotcakes, even though it wasn't that popular a subject for, you know, in the wider scheme of things. I think that you know, somebody like Tamiya could really do with maybe not taking on the Wingnut Wings molds, but that's an option, but certainly taking on the style of the instructions and the way they present. I think that Tamiya are quite close to this, but not as good. Not as good, and a little bit more research, a little bit more presentation. I think they could match this. But anyway, then you're at your instrument board, which looks fairly basic, I've got to say. I think it's just altitude and speed, oil pressure, and that's about it. You've got the oil and petrol tank going in ahead. Then you've got the pilot's seat, which just looks like nothing more than a wicker chair, really. Then you've got your cockpit and your Vickers Mark 1 machine guns going in here. There's another great photograph of them and how they should be positioned. Shows the ammunition chutes here for the feed chutes and the ejector chutes. Shows it all in position there and how it should relatively look within the front of the cockpit. Brilliant. Again, invaluable. They have a colour painting guide so you can see what colours should be. Leaves you in no doubt. Obviously if you don't get the exact shade, I don't think that's critical, but it gives you the idea of the contrasts and the basic colours that we're going to need. And then it shows, oh, here we go. I always get nervous when I see this. Internal rigging guide, bracing rigging, bracing pieces and control cables also included. So you'll need to invest in some nice rigging line for that. And then it's got some colour photographs of the actual aircraft, which is one of these restored ones that Peter Jackson owns, I think. It's a reproduction built one, okay. But yeah, the Vintage Aviator Limited own it. I think he's one of Mr. Jackson's companies. If he doesn't own the company, he certainly has an interest in it. Look at the chair. You can see what I meant about the Lloyd Loom chair, wicker chair. Do you really want to go into a dogfight sitting in that? Anyway, it shows the petrol pump, the throttle and the petrol taps, all the controls the pilot needs to access to. We've got the fuselage, a few holes to be drilled, shows how the rigging and the control cables are coming out there at the back. Again, the tail skid, it is just a skid, it's not a wheel. But it's quite sharp ended, isn't it? That's going to make a mess of your grassy strip, isn't it? I'm surprised they didn't put more of a skid on it, flattened it a bit. Shows the position, how the cockpit section you built goes into the fuselage. Sorry, I'm not holding this very well. There we go. And then we've got these shields at the front of the cockpit. Now, Barker had his cut down, and it says you need to cut down to create Barker's unique shields. So that's a very important point to make it look like his aircraft. He had them slimmed off. Perhaps he just wanted a bit more room to move his hands around, I don't know. And then we've got the wings coming on, and you've got the shields are visible there in that photo at the bottom with this sort of angled off style to them. And you've got your 230 horsepower Bentley BR2 engine being built here, which looks quite a smart little piece. You can see all the push rods, intake pipes, some nice photographs at the bottom of the actual engine to help you. Then we're into the struts on the next page, where we've got all the wing struts and the rigging. Ooh, tensioning wires, nasty. And then we've got the sights on the front of the Vickers machine guns here. And there's a nice photo here of the actual aircraft. Some more pictures now showing the how the back of the top plane sits, and how it's got this padding in the event of the pilot banging his head against it. Putting in your top wing, obviously, into the struts, and then we've got another nice photograph of the actual aircraft with one or two details on it, showing the gun timing, which obviously is critical with the way that the engine spins, so it doesn't shoot its own propeller off. Front cowl going in, and then you're building up your undercart with your Palmer tyres. That's before the days of Dunlop, I think this was. And your final assembly with your beautiful wooden spinner, wooden effect spinning. Just did a little bit of a paint job on that, I think. And then we have the ailerons going in onto the top wing, and your tail then goes on. There's a rather nasty picture at the bottom of one that's gone nose over tail, and it says post-war crash of an unidentified 70 Squadron Snipe allows us to see the highly castor oil stained fuselage and wings. Castor oil, that's coming from all the lubrication of the undercarriage, I think. Also coming out of the engine, some of it. The number of children present, no doubt in their brightly coloured clothing, makes a scene like this an interesting diorama subject. Okay. And then we've got the rigging guy. This is where it gets a little bit scary for me. Very scary. Control cables, rigging, REF, aerodynamic wires. Gosh. In blue. So that's when they act like a wing. They've got like an aerofoil section to the wiring to reduce drag. And then we've got the decal and painting guide at the back, and it looks absolutely fantastic. It shows this staining effect. William George Barker here, standing in front of his Sopwith camel. July 1918. He's from Manitoba, Canada. He joined the Mounted Rifles in December 1914. Not a good move. It's a rather dangerous occupation. Served in the trenches, and he was a machine gunner until March 16, when he was transferred to the Royal Flying Corps and served initially as an observer. And it tells you basically the whole history, and then this incredible action on the 26th of October, and he was flying to St Omer, and he took up one last solo patrol, and he was jumped by at least 15 Fokkers. Well, they do reckon that there was four different flights of 15, so 16 total, and he sort of descended through this 60 aircraft. It must have been quite terrifying, to be honest, even for a man as brave as he. And then you got some details about the details of the markings and 1 or 2 weathering points they're making here. And then last but not least, and this is really excellent, this is the figure, that's a resin figure that comes with this kit. And the thing that struck me when I saw it, really leaped out, was the flying boots, which are these like hide, fur-lined flying boots. If you look very carefully, the detail on them is absolutely incredible. This is a figure that's only 2 inches tall or so, which I shall show you in a second. It shows what the standard overalls were like, and they call it red brown leather fug boots with woolen lining. So those are fug boots, F-U-G. But they're so well represented in the resin. And then there's a credit to all these geniuses at Wingnut Wings who made it all possible, and very sadly many of these guys probably lost their jobs recently, so all I can say, if you're watching this, any of you, that thanks very much for all you did, because you set a complete new standard in scale model kits, and the only regret that I have, it's not a criticism, because decisions are made at the top in these companies, but it's a shame that they didn't get a chance to get that Lancaster done sooner, because I think if they got the Lancaster out and maybe a Spitfire, a Mustang or an ME-109, I think they'd have made more money. I think it would have been a much more sustainable project in its own right. I mean, the Lancaster was going to be retailing at £400. I still think they'd have sold quite a few of those, just to have the ultimate model in your collection. Anyway, we move on. So that's the instructions, which are, as ever, absolutely superb. I mean, it's like a journey through history. It's an education. It's not like just building a kit, you know. Here we've got, I won't open them, but here we've got the photo etch parts, which there aren't many, if I'm honest. There's just half a dozen or so. There we go. They seem to be controls in the cockpit mainly. Looks like a hand cranking lever, and I'm not sure what the bottom one is. It looks like a bracing cover or something. That's them, and then we have the decals, which look absolutely lovely, and everybody assures me that these will be superb. Another thing they did really, really well, and I can read through it. Actually says that they're printed by Cartograph, it says there. Don't know if you can quite read that. But that's the music to our eyes, so to speak. There you go. They'll be absolutely dandy. So let's have a look what we actually have in the kit. Starting, I think, with William Barker, the flying ace himself. As I say, I'm not going to take these out of the bags, but get a load of this. You can see here these fug boots, these fur-lined leather boots. Absolutely exceptional. The figure of Barker himself if we can just get the camera to be sensible. Look at the got the head there, and the detail. The detail is absolutely superb. You've got his arms and his legs and his neck, isn't it, all separate little sections, but absolutely amazing. Superb quality moulding in resin. That is one of the very best for sure. So that's very, very nice. And then we've got the actual sprues. So we'll start off with the small ones, I think. We have the clear sprues, and it's just literally a couple of, I think maybe a couple of little mirrors and a gun sight. I think that's kind of it, really. There's not a lot to talk about there, but they look beautiful, flash free, spot on. Then we have the engine. So this is the Bentley engine, and you've got your intake pipes, you've got your push rods, and then you've got your cylinders here and here, front and rear section. I think they're the little magnetos, I think these are here. Looks absolutely stunning. No problem, no broken parts, no warped parts, just the usual perfection from Wingnut Wings. Superb. Then we've got a big sprue. Now you're going to have to forgive me because I always struggle with these World War I aircraft. I don't know what half the parts are. Quite alien to me. But obviously we've got the cowling here for the engine, and we've got the instrument panel, and we've got the chair. Which I think, yeah, they've actually tried to engrave into this sort of wicker pattern I talked about. Don't know if you can quite see that. It's really nice. It's definitely very well done. The camera's not really able to pick it up, but it's got this engraving in it that's like wicker. You might be able to get it there. And then we've got numerous other parts. So we've got the sides of the cockpit here. These are the two cockpit sides. We have got the struts, the main struts here and here. And then you've got various components, so you've got, this is where I start to struggle. I think we've got some pedals there, that would be the rudder. And then on this side you've got, it looks like taps. I think that's the feeder taps for the engine, from the fuel system. And, oh yeah, got more struts at the end here. More struts here, I've got an air pitot there, I think it's a temperature gauge and a little bit of a pitot head. See it? That's nice, isn't it? And again, you know, other manufacturers would probably, if that was made by Revell, this would be covered in flash, yeah. Not Wingnut Wings. So some pretty stunning parts there. And we've got a really big sprue, so I'll zoom you right out for this one. Here we go. So we've got the tailplane. We've got, sorry, the tailplane's here. The rudder here. And we've got the size of the fuselage. It's quite a short, stubby little plane, this Snipe. It's, I'd say they obviously decided they could get the aircraft a little bit shorter, probably make it a little bit less draggy. You've got the top of the cockpit coating there, which is this area where you need to cut these shields back a bit for Barker's plane. So if they're marked with anything, no, I think you might have to take a bit of a flyer on that and just carefully do it. Looks like a tricky operation, if I'm honest. And then we've got a lovely spinner here. Nice one, very nice. Complete with all the bolts at the front. And you've got this beautiful stressed effect in the, hope that's going to pick up, stressed effect that's in the side of the skin of the fuselage. Can you see that? Yeah, there it is. Very, very nice. That's very cool. And again, that's quite a complicated sprue to manufacture because it's a strange shape. It's in a big L shape. Yeah. But it's perfectly flat. There's no warped parts here. Beautiful. Now we've got some undercarriage and weapons. So we've got our Palmer wheel. In fact, there's two of these sprues, they're identical. So we've got the wheel, and then you've got the Palmer tyres. I don't know if you can actually read that it says Palmer on them, but trust me, it does. It's engraved on there. Might be able to pick it up, I don't know. A bit tricky. Don't think the camera's liking the reflections. And then, of course, we've got these little bomblets that were very in vogue in World War One. Not much bigger than a hand grenade with a fin on the back, really. Often just chuck, I think they just chuck them out like a flechette, thrown out the side by hand. And then we've got some more struts for the wing. And here, not to be forgotten, the Vickers machine gun, which looks really nice. That's moulded in two halves, I think. Yep, so that's two parts that are the same, two sprues that are the same. And then last but not least, the wings. Now, those of you who have seen my other recent videos will probably recall me getting very animated and really extremely cross with Meng because they have sent me now 4 replacements for the Fokker triplane DL1, and every time they send it, it's got parts missing, well, not missing, but broken, and more to the point, more urgent. The sprue is just warped like so. It goes straight at one end. The starboard side of the wing is perfect, and then the port side is just warped. In varying degrees on varying sprues, but they're all bad, to be honest. Here we've got the Wingnut wing sprue for the Snipe. The only warping there is the dihedral, which is intended in the aircraft, and that is built into the design, and the sprue is absolutely perfect, faultless. I kind of despair. I actually saw a photograph recently of the original test shot of the sprue, Wingnut wing sprue for Meng, or what became for Meng, when Wingnuts were intending to make it themselves. It is said that Meng were going to do the injection moulding anyway, but on their original test shot it's perfect, it's flat as a pancake, even though the design is the same. So clearly it's not necessarily a design fault within the sprue, even though they've tried to correct it by beefing it up with a little T-shaped piece on one section. It's kind of it's a bit like this here. They've made a T to make it strong. Hasn't helped at all. I think we're all convinced now that it's the way they're handling these sprues. They're probably coming out too hot and being ripped out of the mould, and that's causing them to warp because they're still soft and pliable. Anyway, I'm digressing. Let's have a closer look at this perfect Snipe sprue, because this is the standard that we've become used to, you know. So, look at the beautiful ribbing on here. Absolutely superb. Really, really nice. You know, you've got your canvas effect, stretch effect at the leading edge. You've got the little rivets on the ribs. They may be screws, in fact. I need probably better glasses to tell. And then you've got your lower wing here. And yeah, it's just what you'd expect. It's sheer perfection in plastic, really. There's your ailerons at the bottom. Turn it over, see the underside, and it's just more of the same. Beautiful moulding, stretch skin effect, although the stretching isn't as obvious underneath because it's obviously flatter. But it's just, the realism is there, there's no problems. It's superb. It's superb, and unfortunately it just serves this one to remind us once again what we've lost with Wingnut wings, because you know they really were arguably, you may not like World War One aircraft, it may not be your thing, historically it's not been my thing either, but wow, it's quite, once you start handling these you think, you know, they're a bit addictive, Moorish you might say, but everything about them, even the box, you know, the presentation, the printing, you've got some nice gold foil leaf around the outside. It's been done properly from start to finish. The whole concept has been done properly. It's just a shame that they restricted themselves too much. I think if they'd done 30% or 50% less World War One and moved into other things, it would have been so nice to see these guys building, you know, the Lancaster and maybe a Mosquito or something. And indeed, you know, less popular aircraft like maybe Air, Cobra or something like that. And who knows, even vehicles, cars, tanks. It would have been brilliant. Anyway, they are no longer with us, so all we can do is lament them, mourn them, and celebrate them, because they are probably the best manufacturer model kits that's ever been, in truth. So there we go, so that's Wingnut kits. That's the William Barker, this heroic Canadian fighter ace of World War I, who sadly, by the way, died in an accident just testing an aircraft about 10 years later. It was just an unfortunate thing. He was a bit too gung-ho and a bit too brave for his own good, I think. And I think when the war came to an end, he kind of lost his purpose in life. He wasn't able to adapt very well. But he was a great hero for his country, and every Canadian should know his name, I think. I'm sure they probably do. But there we go. Hope you enjoyed the review. I'm going to break my rule and say 10 out of 10, because, well, wouldn't it be? There's nothing wrong with it. It's perfection, you know. Even if it's not your sort of subject, you just can't find it. It's totally faultless, and a great present for me. Thank you very much to the person who gave me. There we go. So, yeah. I'm afraid we're probably not going to get too many more of these Wingnuts reviews, because I'm not a millionaire. And I saw the Gota, which I reviewed not long ago in the summer, the Gota bomber, and I think one of them was changing hands for £1,200. I couldn't believe it, honestly. They are becoming very valuable, and this is why I was a bit reluctant sort of to open the bag just yet. Maybe in the future I might revisit it and open the bag, but we'll see. Hope you enjoyed the review, so I should say. Thanks for joining me. Please give me a thumbs up, as I did for this. What is there not to like? We have perfection here, something to enjoy for everybody. Please subscribe if you haven't already, and ding the notification bell so you'll see up and coming videos that may be of similar interest, and you don't want to miss those. We'll try and get some nice interesting ones coming through for you in the very near future. I have got another video and another gift I received, another kit, which is another nice one, but more on that later. In the meantime, thanks for joining me. Stay safe, stay well, enjoy your break, and hope to see you again in the near future. Meantime, thanks a lot and bye for now.